Slamming the file onto the table, I point and say, "Open it." My niece looks at me, but has a slight grin on how bad could it be. I've dealt with the worst. Then she opens and begins to read. She also begins to check out the pictures, and she goes completely pale. The pictures are of something so horrible. At first glance, it seems like she's going to faint, as it seems like all the blood just ran not just from her face, but from her hands, and seems like it was just gone. She pulls up a large picture of a spider, but not just a spider the size of a go-kart, not counting the legs, with a human half sticking out the top. Not just on the top of its head, but she looks at another one where it looks like the human half is halfway into the second segment of this giant spider. I tell her, these are arachne, or as we like to call them, widows, a name they definitely earned. These widows were an amalgamation created specifically to take out another threat. She looked at me sideways, thinking what in the hell could be even more dangerous than these. I could see it in her eyes at that moment. The question of there's something worse? I explained how there's an insectoid species that wanted to completely take over this dimension. They wanted to come in and, well, do things. The arachnids, originally, these very large ones that she was looking at, were found in Africa, a protected zone that everyone says is too dangerous for everybody to pass through, but in actuality, no. It's only dangerous for the creatures inside. Creatures that, like I had said before, like the Makela bembe, even though it's mainly an herbivore, it snacks on a few of these. My employer had caught a few over there, but, well, you could say caught, but in actuality, they only found some DNA. These things are very reclusive. If they don't think that they can take out an enemy very quick, they will make sure they're never seen. And they can blend in extremely well. Thermal imaging is difficult to catch the unaltered ones. I waited till she turned another page to where I knew she was going to read, and I explained where ancient cultures used to use the original arachnids as tools, as security. But unfortunately, they got too dangerous. When they got in too high of a number, they would simply take down whatever they wanted. And the bodies, at least what was left, was brought into study when they were discovered. And they were cloned back in the 80s. And used in the 90s to fight the insectoids when the first of the portals was opened. This made her stop and stare at me. I explained at that point that the insectoids arrived via gate through a Tokarev mirror somebody screwed up in making. The alternate dimension was open to them and, well, it's a long story, I told her, but maybe later we'll talk about it. As it turns out, the clones of these spiders here were very effective. However, these insectoids aren't morons, and they could beat these spiders. They could outmaneuver them, and since they were hardly more than animals, it wasn't hard to figure them out. So these arachnids were adjusted into arachne, and this made them smarter at first. At first, it just increased their intelligence, but one of the geneticists thought to himself, I'm sure, I like boobies, and then you get this. I motioned towards the picture. He created another amalgamation. I mean, yeah, nice to look at and all, and a lot smarter than the original ones that they made, but it worked out really well. At least for a while. You see, the insectoids would come in and they'd be ambushed or they'd get trapped, and of course they'd get eaten. And with very little difficulty, well, that portal, even though they were having a hard time figuring out how to shut it without simply blowing it the hell up, they could simply make sure that there was no invasion. Then an entire research team in that facility suddenly went dark. 28 personnel. Within an hour, just gone. She looked at me sideways, like, how did that happen? I look at her and said, well, I'm about to tell you. Flipping over to another page so that she could read along with some of this while I talk, I continue with, I was sent with about 13 others. And when we got there was webbing all around the forest. I mean, all around the opening here, an opening that shouldn't have been there. And it was a type of cave system. Somehow they had burrowed their way out somehow, which is weird. Their bodies aren't designed for that, but whatever, it didn't matter. We simply sent in our own teams. We had people behind us scorching all of the webbing, and we just continued. As we went into the cave, we could see that it was just covered everywhere with webs. And the very moment we stepped inside, even touched the webbing, everything in that cave just went silent. The webbing itself around us, it's sticky, but I mean, it's not super glue sticky like you see in the movies all the time. It's strong, about as strong as twine that you get up at any type of hardware store. So it's fairly easily cut, but it's also easy to get tangled in it because it's so fine that it just gets everywhere. As we moved very tactfully. We moved very carefully. And at one point, as we were, 50 to 100 meters in the cave, we started to hear a woman cry, and we didn't have any idea where it was. We were moving forward slowly, tactfully, because again, we didn't know exactly what we were going to face. And that's when we saw it, or her, I guess you could say. It looked like a naked woman who was just crying. She was there. I was strange. It looked like she was covered in dirt, maybe a little bruised, maybe like she'd been beaten and left for dead. We couldn't tell. Eric went to help her. By the time Luke actually yelled for him to stop, she moved with such surprising speed, it shocked the crap out of us. She reached up, wrapped him in a hug with not just human arms, but other appendages as well, and she took off in seconds. It was so quick. By the time we had fired, others had dropped from the trees and the inside of the caves, and we started seeing them, large, some small, all of them just vicious. And we just opened up with everything, looking up, looking down, looking all around. I thought I was back inside a combat zone again, some sort of urban terrain crap, but you know what? That actually had me ready for this, because I was just spinning in all different directions. We circled up back to back as best we could so that they couldn't get behind us. We even had to shoot above us, trying to make sure got covered in all sorts of goop and crap like that. And the worst part, though, out of them all coming in, it wasn't them charging us that I had to worry about. It was the fact that one of them grabbed me by my ankles with some sort of webbing that they shot out like a giant booger. And all of a sudden, I'm on my back and being pulled straight towards a trap door. And as I look forward screaming, I can see long spider legs stretching out, getting ready to grab a hold of me. And I knew what happened if it grabbed a hold of me. Thankfully, since I landed on my back, I didn't lose control of my weapon. I simply opened my legs, put that sucker down across me, and I just opened up, emptying an entire magazine into whatever in the hell was waiting. And the trap door just slammed shut as all sorts of goop started flying out. Immediately, I was cut free by Ricky as he came over, and we both rejoined the group. However, Arroyo wasn't so lucky. He was dragged in screaming. When he was pulled sideways, which meant that the sticky threads got a hold of his weapon, and as he got yanked forward, well, that thing got pulled right out of his hands, and he was inside that hole before we even knew what the hell was going on. We could hear muffled screams from inside, knowing what was going on, and then all of a sudden, the trap door exploded, and it just blew apart, and there was just stuff everywhere. Small bits of chitin landed on us, a couple splatters of human blood. I think I saw an eyeball go flying one way or another, but we were too busy shooting to really give a crap. I kind of laughed as my nephew looked at me and said, "Why? What's so funny about that?" I looked at her, calmed myself, and said, "Look, Aurelio always said he would not be taken down. And if there was anything, he's going to go out his own way. Meaning, oh, he took the bastard with him. And he knew exactly that. He's the type of guy who actually had explosives strapped to his chest for this exact reason. Oh God. Well, considering what they do to you, they don't actually stick fangs in you and kill you. No. They actually beat you to death in there. Well, that's why we could hear the screaming. Oh, jeez, she said. Oh, yeah, and there were trapdoors everywhere. As soon as we stopped and looked around, we could see them all over the place. Thankfully, I don't go anywhere without a couple things that go kablooey. I used to toss some grenades in. We were all pretty heavily loaded down with ammo when we went in, but hey, better to have and not need than need and not have at that point. I remember tossing in one grenade, and it seemed like the tap door just dropped and kaboom. Yeah. In the confined space, it means nothing but goo is going to remain. I mean, there's so much concussive force there that it doesn't matter if it's inside chitin. It just liquefies on the inside. Unfortunately, these things are smart. They learn to actually toss the grenade backs. And unfortunately, when we actually hear grenade and we have to dive sideways to make sure we're clear of that blast, that wasn't so fun. Then again, it's kind of funny when they think we're going to do the same thing, but we just see a spoon pop off and we think, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, throw that please. What do you mean? I mean a 5-second fuse burns 3 seconds, as in don't count past 3 when you're cooking off a grenade. Just chuck the son of a bitch. It rolled right in, and as soon as that thing reached up and grabbed it and pulled it in to get ready to throw, it went off right in the thing's face. And yeah, needless to say, when we looked in, we could see there was some human parts. There was no human head left because apparently this thing had it right in front of it. And of course, several limbs, to include the human parts, were just gone. At that point, we had to radio for assistance. We actually went over the radio and said, no water, which means bring the heat. And we immediately left the area as fast as we could, running right outside past the guys clearing out the forest. And that's when the fire started raining down, literally. Started spraying everywhere. And you didn't get in trouble for that? You're setting the forest on fire. I looked at her and grinned. I didn't even realize I was doing it for a second. Well, you really think all those fires are just accidental, out of control burning fires or whatever? Was it controlled fires that got out of hand, or however the hell you want to spin it? No, we're just covering our tracks. That's all. And I'm sure they brought in later somebody to extinguish the fire. I mean, it was the wet season anyway, so what does it matter? And once we got everything burned up, we head straight for the cave again. And this time, we sent the fire in a little bit beforehand. We weren't going to have the same problems twice. And thankfully, whatever was inside ran back into the cave because the fire was smoldering all that webbing. It doesn't quite burn. It's kind of like a grass fire. You'll see just a little bit of fire and it just keeps moving and moving and moving and will eventually just burn everything out. So, yeah. All we had to do was either wait or go in, but we weren't paid to wait. And since there's nothing alive on the surface, back in the cave we go. And we moved in, and this time, we're packing heat too, as in ready with flamethrowers. I can even still remember Jimmy, me, Steve, and a couple others got all sorts of crap because we were wearing protective masks. And everybody was like, you're barely going to get any oxygen anyway. Why are you slowing it down? What are you guys, a bunch of pussies? Blah, 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 blah. The others began to act weird after a while, though. And pretty soon, our chemical alarm started to chirp. Not loud, but enough that we needed to stop and check. As we check, Maurice kind of walked away. We didn't even notice. He just kind of turned and walked off into a side cave. We're like, what the hell is going on? And as we looked, sure enough, there's another naked body there. but it's like he was, I don't know, in some sort of trance. Before we even realized what was going on, she grabbed him, but he didn't even scream. And of course, there was another firefight, but only this time with actual fire, as every time we fired in a direction, we're using tracer rounds and we're using flamethrowers and we're throwing any type of incendiary grenades, whatever we need to do to make sure we burn this place to the frickin' ground. Unfortunately, there's too much air flowing through. And since the air is blowing back out and it's really cold, well, let's just say the fire kept us warm. Besides, by the time we were done, we're pushing everything from the cave towards the facility and we're getting everything out of our way. And that's when we saw it. Saw what? The new entrance that they had created from the original facility. It was compromised and originally sealed, but apparently they'd found a weak spot in the wall and they'd been able to punch through. Remind me to tell the engineers they fucked up. Really? Just by screwing up just a little bit? Only takes a little bit when you're dealing with creatures that smart and that strong. Seriously. I didn't even tell you. I actually got nailed in the chest by one of those right through my protective vest, my plate carrier, and it still cracked a rib. These things are strong. They're not to be trifled with. She began to lose even more of the color that had slowly come back to her face, but now she was realizing how dangerous this actually was. I continued with, the cave was confusing until we reached the facility wall, but inside the walls, the ceiling, the floor, everything was covered in webs. And since we didn't want to actually fight in the middle of a fire, unless we had to, we just set the webbing on fire right there at the entrance and we just let it smolder. Eventually everything would burn up because we didn't think that these things had a way of putting the fire out. Thankfully, we only had to work our way through 2 active floors. The other ones were collapsed in during containment. I'm actually surprised it didn't crush the entire thing, but I don't know, maybe the researchers screwed up, maybe the engineer didn't get it right, maybe these things severed the wires for the explosives. I don't know, and I don't really give a crap. All I know is as we're going, we look into one room and we found Eric. He was mostly wrapped in webs, stripped of all his gear and all his clothes, and just there, still alive with certain parts of him exposed, as in both his heads. My niece looked up and said, "Wait, he wasn't human? How could he have 2 heads?" I looked at her and said, "Biology. Now, just listen, okay? When we went to help him, I suddenly could, I don't know, maybe it was a sense, maybe I instinctively saw something, maybe I instinctively heard something, but I yelled at everybody, 'Stop.' And that's when we searched. We stopped, looked, listened, and that's when we saw her. An ARACHNE moving very, very slowly. She clearly had intelligence in her eyes. And I asked her as polite as possible to let the medic go. She was at that point right behind him with most of her body. Yeah, we could have shot her, but I don't think we would have got a kill shot on her without having to kill our buddy. She looked at it and she responded saying how this one was not useful anyway. And she was over there slapping his head around trying to get some sort of reaction from him. Joe, in his ultimate wisdom, actually told her she's not going to get what she wants. But that's because Eric has some of the worst PTSD he's ever seen. And without his meds, or his wife in particular, there's no way she is going to get what she desires. And that's just the way it is. She thought about it. She didn't know what PTSD was, but she obviously realized that whatever she wanted, she wasn't going to get. And she backed away, disappearing into another shadow. And we got him free. We find bite marks, of course, and it looks like he was sedated, but alive. We didn't know if these were human bite marks or these were from the other mouth of the arachnid, because apparently the ARACHNE have 2 actual heads. They have the human head, they have the spider head, both have brains. So you blow one off, you better hope you got the second one because it's still gonna function. Thinking back, oh man, it's a good thing those grenades work on scrambling the intestines too, or else just blowing off the human head wouldn't have worked. At that point, I looked at my niece and realized she was about to vomit, so I tried to lighten things up a little bit. Oh, don't worry, we got him out. Two of the guys took him out, and the rest of us advanced, so he's fine. He's never going into a cave ever again, but he's fine. As we move forward, we hear crunching sounds, and unfortunately, when we turned the corner, we found Maurice, well, at least what was left. A large arachne was eating as she was actually crapping out offspring on the other side. It looked like both heads were actually chewing on. It looked like the spider head was actually reaching up, grabbing large sections like an arm or a leg or any other thing that was dangling and ripping it off and swallowing it down, while the more human head was simply taking small bites of whatever squishy flesh they could get a hold of. We were astonished by this. Just crazy. What the hell we're looking at, realizing what's going on and thinking, well, I'm going to find that geneticist and I'm going to give him a bad goodbye. But we didn't have time to think about that. The offspring, they must have sensed us because those little bastards decided to just charge and attack, just screeching the entire way. Yet it was odd. The offspring are having a bit of difficulty maneuvering on the web. They're fumbling. It's like they're actually getting stuck as they're trying to get all the way, thinking that they're going to take down a new piece of meat. But nope, they ended up making easy targets because they're just kind of, I don't know. It's like somebody walking along and their boots keep getting stuck. Well, that's going to make them easy targets. Realizing they eat the males after breeding, this being obvious, we made sure that nothing else left that room. Unfortunately, that meant Maurice, because we didn't know if eggs were laid inside him or whatever, where this was just flying in the dark at this point. We simply would have to get his tags off of what was left of his body. After that, we continued to the portal room. And honestly, seeing that thing, it's the stuff of nightmares. You can actually see the other dimension through it. It's weird. It's got all sorts of funky colors coming out of it, but it's clearly unstable. I don't know how else to explain it, really. And that right there, as we got up towards the portal, we found the strongest one. She moved really, really fast. Unbelievably quick. I can't underestimate or understate how fast this thing moved. She was large. She was nimble. And when she got close, she would strike out, and my God, that stung. I kid you not, she cracked me across the back as I was running to a different position. She not only destroyed my hydration pack on my back, but struck with enough force that she actually cracked the plate. I'm thinking if I didn't have that, well, I'd probably have a busted spine for sure. And it was as though she wasn't afraid of firearms either. But still, she just moved in a way that was crazy. And the bad part was, if you dropped your weapon, she actually picked it up and used it. She wasn't stupid. But thankfully, she didn't know one thing. My niece, leaning forward, asked, "What was that?" She didn't know how to reload, I told her. And that meant once she actually drained the rounds, and which, by the way, she couldn't shoot. She just kind of sprayed and prayed anyway. But it also gave away her position. And it's crazy. She would fire, it would go click. If it got jammed or anything, she wouldn't know how to clear it. And she's just kind of there for a second, which gave us a chance to reposition and re-engage. Unfortunately, we lost 4 guys in that firefight. One guy from bleeding out because his femoral was quite literally exploded at point blank range. Of course, that's what happens when somebody hits you with a shotgun blast. And the other ones, well, let's see, slice across the neck. He was dead before he hit the ground. Another one, a spike from one of the legs through the eye. Again, he didn't feel anything except, well, I'm sure that leg was the last thing to go through his mind. And the other one I didn't actually see. He wasn't one I actually knew very well. He was some new guy. And this is the problem with new guys. We don't get to know them because we know this job is, yeah. Once we actually got an advantage, it seemed like several other spiders like charged at us from another direction, and she jumped literally straight through the portal. And when she did, I finally got a really good look at her. She didn't look like the standard arachnid. No, she looked almost human. And it's strange. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, here's a clip right here where I didn't realize she was standing right there. I mean, look at this. She looks almost human, if not for the fact she's got multiple legs sticking out her butt. And I mean, seriously, not to mention those glowing eyes just kind of rippling. It was something about the portal itself just made her eyes glow when she looked at you. And that's something you'll see in your dreams for sure. But once she jumped through the portal, we didn't have much problems at all. We surprisingly found 2 spiders alive. It was strange. I don't know if they just gave up, they were knocked out, or whatever it might be. And when we looked, they weren't spiders. They were arachne. Well, we wrapped up the feet, gagged the spider and the human, and out we go. And before that, we started setting all sorts of charges all the way around the portal. If that bitch was going to come back, she was going to find a whole bunch of problems. The best we could do is hopefully destroy it. However, if it doesn't destroy, we can actually make it more unstable, which means if they try to come through, she'll be all sorts of twisted, mutilated, and all sorts of crap. As we set the charges, I looked over at another one, and I was surprised when we got to it, and well, we saw it was breathing, barely. And then I saw that it was the same shape as that queen or whatever the hell she was that left. It was odd. I couldn't understand it. And then she just kind of looked up and, believe it or not, she asked for water. And I was like, that's weird. Then we looked at her as the human portion of her. Boy, she was emaciated. I mean, seriously emaciated. I couldn't understand. And that's when someone else figured out what's going on. These 2 were actually considered as runts, if you could say. Everyone else treated them like garbage. I looked at the scars and bruises and everything. I'm just like, wow. For as human as they are, this is very inhuman the way they were treated. Once they were bound up, we actually called in to see what the hell Command wanted, and sure enough, they want us to bring back another sample. And we're like, well, what about everything else in here? And they simply gave us the go-ahead to destroy everything. Complete scorched earth. They didn't want anything. So I still remember pulling out the C4 out of my satchel and handing it over, and they're like, okay. I thought it'd be all sorts of fine until I realized they're setting a short fuse. Then I asked, how long was that? And they just looked at me and said, run. Yeah, when EOD guys tell you to run, you better keep up, or better yet, outrun them. And we were carrying the 2 specimens with us, and we bolted as quick as we can, passing still smoldering webs all over. We got to the entrance of the facility. We turned, and I could see it's almost a straight line. It kind of curves like a snake, but it's still more or less a straight line. And we were not going to stick around for nothing. Unless something grabbed onto us to slow us down, we're not stopping for nothing. Unfortunately, something was there. A trapdoor got Tyrone, and he actually was getting pulled in. We stopped to cut him loose, but he just yelled, run, before I see him pull out another M67, and I'm just like, oh boy, this is going to be loud. He immediately popped off the secondary, pulled the pin, and he didn't wait. He dove into that hole, and I swear I heard him say, what's up, before kablooey. Oh, dear God. And I know him. He most likely shoved that damn grenade down the Arachne's throat. Although, as much as we want to enjoy the idea of him going out in a badass fashion, the explosives were about to go off and we were not staking around, and when they did, the whole place rumbled and shook. I'm sure it came up on some sort of seismic something. Just one of those random, oh look, there was an earthquake in this area. Oh no, seismic must be going up. Yeah, no, that was us. And as we ran, the energy wave that came off of that portal, wow. It just came in ripples and waves. It looked like something out of a video game or a CGI movie. It just kind of rippled across and it was catching up really quick. And I'll tell you what, you haven't experienced it yet, but trust me, if adrenaline's running that high, you are not slowing down. If anything, you're going as fast as your muscles, tendons, and bones can handle. You'll actually blow them out, pushing as far as you can because your limiter shuts off. And just as we got outside, we turned and we're saying, just move, cover, down, everything we can, as we dove off to the side, and the blast actually came flying right past us. Couldn't have been a second behind us. And, well, this is what happens when you don't listen to a subject matter expert. What happened? My niece said as she's leaning way forward on that table. One of the researchers that was standing by just kind of stood there thinking, oh no, these guys, they don't know what they're talking about. And that blast wave hit him. It didn't just hit him. It pretty much tore him to pieces. As it flung him so far, I'm thinking, can you see my house from up there? And I'm sure when he landed, somebody yelled, touchdown, or field goal, or whatever, home run, or some goofy shit like that. So you got them all then? My niece said, nope, we did not get them all out. The two that were mostly human that we actually got looked at us and, well, they survived for sure. I know that much. They were alive when we got them out. But each time I get a request to take out some of these widows or eight-legged freak, I'm sorry, I turn them down every single time. So there's more of them? My niece asked. No, the two sisters actually escaped containment. You can't keep these things contained. They are too smart, too strong, too fast. That's when I showed her pictures of the two humanoid or almost human arachnids that we actually got out. And they were beautiful. They had grown up to be absolute goddesses in their own right. I told my niece, look, they seduce, and once they seduce, they breed. And when they breed, they reproduce. And then they leave to start another colony. As soon as they crap out a bunch of kids, they just leave those to grow, and they know if they stay, they're going to get caught. And they were only caught once because, well, I should say one of them got caught as she tried to, well, get on some sort of government assistance claiming all her kids. Kind of flags the area when you actually claim you're a citizen, but you have, I think she said 108 children or some such craziness, just this insane number. It probably wasn't that high, but seriously, these are flags that just go up all the way. So she was captured, my niece says. Nope, she's not captured. She's not contained, because when she was on the transport, somehow she was able to seduce one of the guards, and now both of them are out there somewhere, just as dangerous as ever, but I don't think they're together. They're separate, which makes them a lot harder to track. My niece, worried, sat back and said, is there any way to keep from getting killed by these things? Oh yeah, I told her. It's very simple, at least for guys. What do you mean? You wear a condom, I said. The whole idea is they run on instinct. And on the moment the fresh DNA is injected into their bodies, it triggers the immediate primal response of killing and consuming in order to have enough proteins, irons, and everything else to reproduce. And then I realized at that point who I was saying this to. And then I said, well, listen, for you, all you have to do is just be careful who you become friends with, okay? If they're being led around by their desires and wanting you to kind of do the same thing so they can, hide in the crowd, all you have to do is simply back away, and you don't have to worry about it, okay? She pauses for a second before asking, so is this the reason you don't go into caves? You don't go spelunking at all? I suddenly realize that I'm standing perfectly straight at that point. So I say, oh, no. There's a completely different file for that. Hello, everybody. This is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on number 13 of The Files. And before I go, I have to say that today's winner is Julius Boone. And I also need to send out some humongous thank yous to the supporters of this channel. And they are Douglas Scarborough, Prozac and Pancakes, SS Demon, MTF Guard, Brian Kemp, Guardian Sage, Erica Gem, and Steve Uwig. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax.
Ejecting!